Nowadays, EA is infamous for its greed and microtransactions, but what if I told you it's gonna get even worse? So much worse in fact that it could endanger the entire gaming industry. You see, EA has just been bought by Saudi Arabia itself, or more specifically the Crown Prince, and that means it's completely under their control. Microtransactions, new releases, censorship, everything. And if you thought it couldn't get any worse, this acquisition has put EA into 20 billions of debt. How will they get that money back? By forcing even more monetization down our throats, and if the Saudis notice that this approach works, then EA might be the first, but not the last. So let's take a look at how a company that named itself Electronic Arts out of respect for video games underwent the biggest downfall in history, and how recently it turned into a puppet. Now it all began in 1982, when a man named Trip Hawkins, yes that's his actual name, founded Amazing Software. Another very unfortunate name. That same year, his employees begged him to change it, and Hawkins eventually budged and renamed it to Electronic Arts, or just EA for short. But the name wasn't symbolic. Hawkins truly believed that games are an art form and developers are artists. They even made posters of their own developers, something that is quite unusual even today, and back then, it was unheard of. Yes, EA. Out of all gaming companies, EA is the one that treated its developers and its products like art and artists. And it was all the more brave because they did it in an age where technology was for nerds. But it wouldn't take long before it all started falling apart. As the 2000s began and slowly started passing, EA underwent a horrible change. Sims, one of their most iconic products, opened a door that should have stayed closed: DLCs. Suddenly, EA realized that these content packs can be included in every single game, and that selling the game itself doesn't have to be the main source of revenue. The 2010s brought another idea along: microtransactions, and with that, the EA business model was complete. But it wasn't about beloved developers creating pieces of electronic art anymore. It was about offering an incomplete game that forced the user to constantly spend money, like selling cigarettes to preschoolers and telling them that it's candy. Finally, all the greed exploded in 2017. Battlefront 2 released with a ton of hype around it, only for players to be met with a $60 price tag and a progression system based entirely on loot boxes. But instead of EA backtracking, they pushed back. The intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment. That response became the most downvoted Reddit comment in history. At that moment, the public opinion changed forever. EA wasn't just another generic greedy company anymore. It became a villain and the face of greed in the gaming industry. Yet somehow these might still be considered the good old times, because 9 years later, EA is no longer Electronic Arts. It's a puppet of Saudi Arabia, and the rabbit hole is incredibly deep. I'll begin by saying that this was the largest company buyout in history. Saudi Arabia spent $35 billion out of their own pocket and borrowed the remaining 20. The craziest thing is that they didn't take on the debt. EA did. I know it sounds insane, but somehow it's legal, and I won't bore you with the details because we're gamers, not the Wolf of Wall Street. Point is, Saudi Arabia effectively bought the entire company debt-free and put EA into debt instead. And how do you get rid of a 20 billion deficit when your yearly earnings before taxes are 1.5 billion? I don't know, but it's definitely massive layoffs, more microtransactions, DLCs, and new releases being like Battlefront 2. But that's just the financial side of things. The quality of the games itself will be affected, and not in the way you think. Saudi Arabia outlawed homosexuality, any form of criticism towards the government and royal family, and every other religion other than Islam. For example, Last of Us Part 2 was banned, God of War was banned, and many more. This video itself is illegal in Saudi Arabia because of the things I've said. Now imagine if this insane level of censorship is added to video games as well. Something as simple as a character praying, drinking alcohol, or having revealing clothing will cause the game to be censored, or more likely, banned. So it all boils down to one simple question: what happens next? EA is now in massive debt bet that will have a devastating impact on all of their games. But that isn't a real answer, because what's on all our minds is how much censorship is coming and how much censorship will games be able to handle until they become unplayable slop. Will chat censorship become even more strict with words like sex and intercourse turning into bannable offenses? Will criticizing the game itself or the developers turn into an unspeakable crime? Will becoming a fucking thief in Sims mean that both of your hands get cut off if you get caught? Or a footballer in FIFA getting dragged off to jail for taking their shirt off during a celebration? I don't know. And that is the worst answer, because we can't prepare, we can't fight, we can only wait. And if the worst case scenario comes to be, EA will only be the beginning, and in a few years, adult themes in video games will become taboo. But enough theorizing. Let me know in the comments what you think, and please like and subscribe so if they come for me, at least someone will know I disappeared. Thanks for watching.